Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. All right, welcome back for episode 160 of the Freight 360 podcast. We got another special episode today. We've got a guest on with us. We'll introduce him in just a second. We're going to be having a discussion about culture and why it's a big game changer in this industry. But first, if you're brand new here, welcome to Freight 360. If you've been with us for a while, welcome back. Continue to send us all of your questions. We've got 3 more listener Q&A questions at the end today. And this episode is brought to you by Blue Book Services. Blue Book Services is the resource you need if you're transporting fresh produce. Their online database contains thousands of companies throughout the produce industry supply chain. You can easily search their database to generate new sales leads. Blue Book's credit ratings help you avoid companies with a high credit risk, and their team can help resolve disputed loads. To learn more, go to producebluebook.com and click Join today. That's producebluebook.com. All right. So today's episode, we've got Jordan Reber. He is the Executive Vice President with ARL Logistics on with us. Jordan, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. What I always think is interesting is the three of us are essentially competitors when it comes to our day-to-day work, right? We all work at different brokerage companies, but I think what's awesome is to come together and have a realistic conversation about things that matter in this industry. And, you know, when I was at one of the TIA conferences last month, and I was like, I'm with 100 of my competitors right now, but we're having really good conversations. So I highly encourage people, don't be afraid to talk to your competition about stuff. So tell us a little bit about ARL and, you know, kind of your journey in freight and how you got to where you are and what you do there today. And then we'll kind of get into things.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll echo your point of collaboration amongst competitors. Let's raise the bar collectively to help each other out. I mean, we've seen a lot of benefit from that here over at ARL. So kudos to that. But yeah, no, I've been at ARL since 2015. I got into freight brokerage 2005, 2006, started a flatbed trucking company here in Pittsburgh, went on to the brokerage side. And I always joke, I was like, I feel like I'm still young and I'm getting up there now. And I'm like, man, when I started, some of these big logistics companies like Echo and Coyote didn't even exist. I was like, that's kind of scary. Maybe I'm not as young as I thought I was. But
that's a good point.
ARL is unique. It's interesting. So ARL Transport's been around since the late 70s. We are an intermodal drayage carrier, asset-based, over 50 terminals. You know, so if you have container drayage needs, ARL Transport can usually help you out. But Ron Faraday, who came on in the industry, and he was 18 years old back in 1981. His dad started the company. He came to me because he wanted to diversify, and he saw the brokerage boom that was happening, and I was looking for a new opportunity, so it just worked out. And this is my second time building a brokerage. I learned a lot my first 10 years, and I was like, hey, I think there's a lot of different things we can do. And we are definitely more of the cradle to grave model, but with technology and a small carrier sales team infused into that. And I know we'll talk about lean solutions, but that was really kind of my aha moment of, I know exactly how I'm going to build this different this time around. And it's been a fun ride since then.
Yeah, we'll get into the lean part later on, but just real quick, how many nearshore folks do you guys have supporting your business then from lean?
Yeah, between ARL Transport and ARL Logistics, we're over 110 employees now.
That's awesome. Yeah.
How many assets you guys have in the drayage side?
We just got an update on Thursday at our leadership meeting. We're at 828.
Wow, that's fantastic. We got to have a conversation off air more about that.
We love drayage. I don't know why, but we love it.
Good stuff.
Man of my own heart. We'll have to dig into that later.
So it wouldn't be a regular episode if we don't talk about sports. And I'm excited to talk about sports with the two of you because you guys are both Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And so let's get through week 4 first. You guys had was it the Thursday nighter?
No,
Sunday.
No, we played Sunday against the Jets.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we'd like to forget it too. So.
Yeah, lost in like the last 2 minutes. Was it like 2.5 minutes, give or take?
But then the Kenny Pickett era has begun. So the silver
lining.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's like your rebuild. You got to start somewhere, right? I mean, I remember when the Bills went through like a million different quarterbacks in a matter of a decade, and then finally this kid named Josh Allen from Wyoming joins the team, and he had a rough rough start, but it was, you got to build around that. And, on the Bills, they somehow pulled off a comeback win after being down by like 17 points in the first half.
And you beat the Ravens, which we thank you for that.
Yes, you're welcome.
I'm going to take some credit because I stopped watching that game at halftime when you guys were losing, and then you guys kind of picked it up the second half. So the only 2 football games I watched, and half of the Bills game on Sunday, and then I turned it off, and you guys started picking up the speed.
Yeah, I was pretty stressed in there. So Ben, do you remember what my prediction was on the game? Though I said it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a very close game, and I said I would not bet the spread on that one, and they did not cover the spread. So. I think I called it like a 1 or 2 point victory, and they did it by 3. So anyway, though, the week 5, it's going to be the Bills and the Steelers. So
what's the spread on that one?
I think it's like 14 or something like that.
It's in Buffalo too. So.
You know what though? It'll shift. It'll move. Like the Bills are not fully healthy right now. Who knows? Maybe Kenny Pickett's just he's going to mature in a matter of a week. You never know. He's going to be slinging 400 yards or something. I don't know.
Well, we did go to Buffalo last year and won, but that was week 1, which we did that again with the Bengals this year. Just caught you at the right time. It's like we've been nervous about this game since the schedule was released.
Yeah, that's right. You guys did have the upset win over the Bills in week 1 last year. And, it's so funny because you get 1 week or 2 weeks into the season, you get these fans that are like, it's over. The whole season's over. And it's like, dude, it's September still.
A lot of football left.
Yeah.
The Bills are at a different trajectory than the Steelers are right now. I think we're realists. We know we're not Super Bowl contenders right now. We got to rebuild the offensive line in the worst way. But a lot of young talent. Where the Bills, you guys have gone through all your pain. You deserve some wins here.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I will give my predictions at the end of the episode here, and I'll make sure I mark my timestamp so our one listener who doesn't like listening to sports can skip it. Very good. Okay, so Ben, let's give a shout out to our friends over at DAT, and then we're going to get into the episode here.
Taking the guesswork out of freight with DAT. The DAT Load Board Network is the largest on-demand freight marketplace in North America, connecting freight brokers with available capacity on any lane. Grow your business with tools that allow you to find new business partners, and you can quickly qualify and onboard new carriers. With the industry's leading freight rate data, you can make clear and confident pricing decisions. Check out the show notes for a free link or free month of DAT Power Express or Trucker's Edge.
Definitely. Okay, so today's episode is going to be all about culture, and I want to set the stage here, and then I want to hear a lot from you, Jordan, and Ben as well. Although we should preface also that Ben did let us know that he just got back from the dentist and might have a little bit of a lisp from some Novocaine or whatnot. So we're going to make sure we call on you a lot, Ben.
You're doing great so far. Keep talking.
So to set the stage here, oftentimes people will ask, like, what makes your company any different than the next brokerage? And there's always like some people say, oh, we can do this and we support that and we've got assets and this, that, our technology is great. At the end of the day, I think what makes one of the biggest differences is the intangible culture or kind of the vibe and the feel that goes with a company. Like some companies have a very corporate feel to them where you have to feel like you're like stiff when you walk in there and it's very rigid, and then others have like work hard, play hard, fun mentality. Others have a very family feel vibe to it, and it's more than just how you feel when you're there. There's a lot of things that go into the culture, but I think that is the intangible that makes the biggest difference between brokerages. And I think that comes down, you see that reflect in when a customer decides they want to work with a certain broker over another broker, regardless of, their rates being slightly higher. It's because they like the person that they're actually doing business with, and they like the culture and how they're treated as a customer, or even carriers as well. You like the way you're treated as a motor carrier for a brokerage. So I guess, talk to me a little bit about the culture at ARL, what goes into creating that culture, and, how do you, I guess, just kind of give me your take on it, your spin on it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it all starts with being that servant leaders. And I think, especially restarting things over here after I helped build another brokerage, you get humbled when you got to start over again. And I was recruiting the people that I knew that had similar core values to me. But ultimately, it wasn't about what we were going to do. It was about the people we need to bring on and how we need to treat them. And coming from what became a churn and burn brokerage, is like, I'm not doing that. That wasn't what I wanted to do. When I bring somebody on, I'm all in. And as long as they stay all in, I'm all in with them, through thick or thin. And no monthly metric is going to tell me that I should let them go. So as we were building up, and really when I connected with Ron Faraday originally, like that's his personality, that is his reputation in this industry. He's really big in the intermodal drayage world. If you're in that space, you know who the heck Ron Faraday is. But what you do know about Ron, if you know him, is he's the hardest working guy I've ever met. And it's because he's always serving somebody. He'll say it all the time. Our drivers are our customers are our customers, our employees are our customers, our carriers are our customers. We are never the customer. So we're always here to say, how can I help you? And I think it's just that mentality. We've taken that to our employees. But then what ended up becoming what we now labeled as day one hustle. And I think that's something Ron and I share. It's like, it doesn't matter how many years we've been doing this, how long we've been working on building this, and what our titles are. It's day one every day. And I think it's something in me. You're always just trying to prove it to someone. I don't even know who I'm trying to prove it to at this point, but showing my employees, like, that is just it. When we come in that first day on a new job, like, you're always trying to impress everyone. You're always trying to learn as much as possible. Like, if you can have that mentality every day and work really hard and utilize the technology that we put in place to really make you look good. And on top of that, as you said, be likable, as your customers want to work with someone they like. Just think of the things you can accomplish, but it's not a 1 month thing or a 1 year thing. Like, you've got to do it every single day. And here I am 16 years later, still doing it. But we really ingrained that in our culture, but we reward the heck out of them for doing that, knowing that they do work their butts off. Like, we need to make this place fun. They should want to come here. They should love Mondays.
I think, just the servant-based, leadership, or however that's defined, I think it's gotten like this, like, I don't know, cliche, like, oh, like, what does that really mean? But when you really do know what it means, it absolutely makes a difference, right? An example, I mean, like, I can see this within our clients, within the companies we work with, which ones have it and which ones don't, right? And I think a really good example of that, and you really kind of hit the nail on the head, is when the manager, there's less of them than there are the people on the floor, just because of the way the hierarchy of a company works. But at the end of the day, even though we technically report to them as a broker, right, they should be serving the brokers. Like, their job is to help the brokers get better, do more, help their customers more, better service their carriers. To your point, right? They're both our customers.
Yep.
And when your manager is there to help you move forward, right, it creates a completely different dynamic within the company, right? You enjoy being there. You like working with your managers because there is that, they're there to help you. You're not there to just, like your point, hit a metric or be walked out the door, right? There are other brokerages that just run with that stick. Do this or you don't have a seat, right? And again, even with the people that are successful, they tend to not want to hang around much longer after that anyway, because again, like, there's no love. You're only as good as your last paycheck, your last report, and nobody really gives a shit whether you come or go anyway, to be honest.
Well, you look at a lot of the people, even if they are successful, it's just a matter of, like, I could lose my biggest customer tomorrow. Then where do I stand? Because I've seen what happens to some of my people that I've came up with, and everyone's working on eggshells at that point. And
always,
they try to offset that with the work hard, play hard, and it's just smoke and mirrors to get these people in the door. And, like, if you just make it so that it is coming that supportive system. Like, I travel a lot now because I have to do all these different things, and when I come back, I feel bad. I was like, I should be here for you guys. I'm sorry, but I have to do these other things too. Now we have fully capable managers that have been promoted from within that are also singing from that, that same mantra. But that's just how I am.
I think one thing I want to add in there too is, just on the, like you said, you reward the heck out of it. And another thing too is the other side of the coin is, if I've seen people that they start off strong, they're doing everything right, and they start to slip. And it could be 6 months in, it could be a year or two in, where they start to, you see all these broker carrier people bashing each other online and in social media groups and whatnot. And I've witnessed it too, where I've got, an agent inside of our company that is getting frustrated because, like, a dispatcher or carrier doesn't want to tell them where the truck is, or something's changed and they're not giving them updates, and they're all getting pissed off. And we have to all remember that, it takes all of us in this to get this transaction done effectively. And we can't just start to slip and get pissed off at our carriers or anybody else and start to treat them as if they're not as good as us or on the same level as us just because something went wrong. So I think in addition to rewarding people for treating culture right, it's also reinforcing, and I guess you don't want to call it, correcting somebody, but it's more so, altering their course if they start to slip away from that right culture, because there's nothing worse than a toxic, cancerous person inside of your organization that, all of a sudden they start their bad attitude and their bad practices starts to spread like wildfire. So
Sure.
it's good to keep that stuff in check and just make sure that, us as leaders in an organization are aware of what's going on, within the range. So just my little.
And I think those moments too, when they are having bad months. I mean, we had two guys we talked to this week. It's like, these are opportunities. Like, yeah, things have happened. It's unfortunate, but like, you now get to reinvent yourself, knowing all the things you know. Like the first time you built, we were, if you had some experience, we were teaching our way. If you didn't have experience, you're still learning. You get to do it all over again, essentially. And pick a different path. And it's almost, it's invigorating to say, okay, cool. Let me try something different here. I don't want to become a robot selling, but I can rebuild my book a different way.
Well, I think you also
made the mistakes now that you didn't make before, for sure.
You also picked up, right, even in your vernacular, you get to, you don't have to, right? And that is a mindset shift that most people don't look at, right? They look at an issue and go, oh, this is horrible. It's demoralizing. I'm anxious. My boss is going to yell at me, or I'm going to get a slap on the wrist, as opposed to, like you said, another example of servant leadership. Like, hey, let's look at this as an opportunity to grow as a broker, to grow as a company, to find different ways to solve these and do that together, right? Now, again, you get to do that. You don't have to do it. And that changes the way it's all going to play out from that point forward the same.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about like hiring and employee retention. I did bring up, the toxic folks. And I think I'll just start off by saying, if you find a cancerous or toxic team member in your organization, it is best to address that immediately and not let it get any worse. And whether that means having a conversation and kind of changing their mindset, or if you have to get rid of that person because they're not going to be a fit for your organization, the sooner the better, because it just gets worse with time. But what I want to talk about it, and we talked with Trey Griggs about this, I want to say about a year ago, Ben, about, culture is huge at an organization, but understanding what's important to each individual team member or employee is extremely paramount, because it's not the same across individuals. So Jordan, what I'm curious on with you is, have you guys taken a certain strategy to recruit talent effectively or retain and advance your team members effectively, outside of the norm?
Yeah, I think we are so heavy into networking, and we invest a lot of money into it as well. That's why we're always out and about. We had a whole tagline a few years ago: expand the network. But the network is so intricate, and it's just all those 3 or 4 or 5 degrees of separation that you tap into those. If you can maintain a good relationship and a reputation, I should say, in this business, you tend to meet a lot of different people that want to do business together. So we built it out that way, with also tapping into the local colleges and finding people that way. But I think to address that cancerous person, I preach through the interviews, we are very transparent. And from day one, I'll give you full trust. If we sign you on, we are all in, and you can have the keys to my car. I don't care. I'm going to trust you that much. But if you start going down a different path, you got to have those awkward conversations, but they're just honest conversations. You look at them that way and just saying, let's just talk about it, because it's actually weirder if we don't.
Yeah.
And then we get it out there, we clear the air, you find out what's really going on. Sometimes it's work related, sometimes it's not. But you got to build that level of trust so they can talk to you about it. And there's always going to be people that just, they're their own worst enemy, and it's eventually just going to go down a path that they're going to walk themselves out the door. But for the most part, I think people want to do a good job. That's why they took the job. And it's just finding what things are going to make them motivated and where they can help your company.
I want to revisit something that you just brought up, and that is like having those hard conversations. I can't stress how important this is. I have seen it too many times where whether it's because of somebody is a subordinate or they're just confused, there's this big elephant in the room because maybe an email came across the wrong way or somebody said something that offended somebody else and they weren't aware of it. Either way, whatever that situation is, it is extremely important to just talk about it and not let it brew. Because if you don't have the conversation, that just honest conversation, what's going to happen? People they start to make assumptions in their mind, and all of a sudden it's like this worst case scenario things are brewing inside their head. And the reality is, you could just have a 5-minute conversation like adults, talk through it. You might find out that you misinterpreted something. They might realize that they were wrong about something. Whatever the case might be, you need to have that conversation and then move forward. Because that stuff, when it just brews and brews, man, it is like palpable when you're in a room where like you can feel the stress. Like no one's talking to anybody. It's so weird.
Well, I think it's important too. Do not just run with one side of the story, as bad as it possibly can be. Like take that other person and let them say their side of the story. Now, there's 3 sides to every story, as we know, but start those conversations with letting them talk. And hey, I heard some things. What happened? And just let them talk, and you'll find that middle ground somewhere.
I think one of my favorite quotes about that is the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place, right? Both parties assume they understand the other party wholeheartedly. And the reality is what they're really understanding is their emotions and how they feel about it, right? There was a mistake. One person can, like you said, just feel scared or feel like they're going to lose their job, and they go down this rabbit hole right in their head. And it's like, if you just bring the issue to the surface and everybody talks about what's really there, it's usually not that big of an issue at all.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk the retention side of it. So obviously you mentioned like networking and all that. Any of us that have been on LinkedIn probably get hit up multiple times by some sort of like recruiting company or whatever. And I'll tell you that I always will happily decline somebody's offer to talk, or I've even talked to folks and tried to refer them to somebody else to go talk to, because I have zero intention of ever leaving the organization that I work with because of the culture and the way that I feel being a part of the team. So with that being said, and people almost trying to poach folks from other companies left and right with growing logistics companies these days, I'm curious on Ben and you as well, what you've experienced in the past, and Jordan, what you guys are doing now at ARL. What is like the key to retaining good talent, within your organization?
Yeah, I think it's like getting to know exactly what each person is really looking to achieve. And that's through doing those reviews and getting that feedback. We have a lot of people here. We hired them because they want to make money, so as long as they're on that path, and the support that we're giving them and making sure at different checkpoints that everything I told you that we were going to do for you, like we were actually delivering on that. And if not, tell me, that's fine. Another thing I always preach to everybody is, hey, come in here, learn our business, see what we do. After 6 months, pick it apart. Call my baby ugly. So you're not going to offend me in the worst way, because I want to make sure that call my baby ugly. Don't call my real kid ugly, but you can call my baby. Because I want to be always evolving. I want to change, but that also makes them part of where we're going. And then they come up with these ideas, and then we can empower them to run with these ideas so they feel like they're a better part of something much bigger, and they have some control on what's going on. And then we'll put some people in those spots, and we ask them these questions. They don't really have much. They think everything's great. They're just kind of saying what they're happy with. They're here. So you don't get that from every employee, but the employees that really need that moment, they will step up and do that. And then we know there's always people coming after our employees all the time. You can get them on LinkedIn. I just assume it's happening. We did, before COVID, started this coalition here in Pittsburgh. Was with my son Mike Cervello from BMAC. It got labeled Steel City of Freight by Freightways, but then became the Transportation Leadership Alliance. But we were working with other companies like Christy Knitchell. I know she's really big on LinkedIn. And just, hey, let's all come together. And like you said to kick off the show, we are competitors, but we also have niche businesses that we play in. We can learn a lot from each other. We can help each other. But at the end of the day, we can share best business practices. And guess what? When we all know each other, we're probably not going to be poaching each other's employees and have to sit there and worry about that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So that is something we need to get back together here now post-COVID. But I think that sort of mindset and surrounding yourself with those people in your area where you have offices, can go a long way.
Yeah, I want to add there too. So I think leadership's a big part of retention too. Obviously, does the team member enjoy, do they enjoy working for whoever's in their chain of command, or whoever their boss or their supervisor is? Do they feel they're getting the support? And you brought up a good point. Like what does that person want in the job? Like you get some people that they want to make money, but others, their priorities are not always money number one. I remember when I first started in brokerage, my boss said, out of these three things, what's most important, or what's the order of importance? And it was like power, money, and recognition. And I was like, I definitely want to make a good commission check, so I'm going to put money first. I was like, power, who doesn't like power? Number two, and I was like, recognition, I don't really need it. So you can just forget, I don't need to be recognized to be happy. But that's not the case for everybody. There are people that they will take, they don't want the commission-based job. They want a stable, maybe like an operations or an administrative role, but they need to be told, great job and thanks for giving it your all this week, because that recognition means more to them than the commission check for the top salesman or broker that works in a cubicle next to them. So
I think it's important too to not devalue those operations people as well. That was a big thing we saw the last company, and it's like those guys are so integral to what we do, and I want salespeople that respect the hell out of what those guys do, because our sales guys typically don't want to get into the weeds of the ops. So let's surround them with support, but also they deserve a piece of the pie too. Yep. They shouldn't have to just sit there and grind it out all day long and hope for a raise or some arbitrary bonus plan. Like, I want to make sure that they get a piece of the commissions that are out there as well, so that they are hungry and aggressive and want to do the work. They're excited by new customers. They'll take those calls after hours on the weekends or respond to an email because we're all in this together. So I think that's important.
I would say that that's probably one of the things I think is one of the larger deficiencies I see with mid-sized to smaller brokerage that have the pod model. The carrier side, right, and the sales is they don't work as a team, right? They literally don't, like, they communicate at the bare minimum, like, hey, this is the truck, this is the MC, this is when he's empty, right? And there's so many missed opportunities when they don't work together. I mean, like, even like bids or can get loads, or a customer's like, hey, if you can get me some capacity, I can give you 4 or 5 loads a week. You got the carrier team going, oh, well, we don't really have them, so maybe we don't work. And then literally no conversation happens, like no communication. And it's like, you can work and everybody benefits when there is more collaboration between both sides and they both see the value in where they're both going together, not independent of the other side.
Yeah, I want to add one thing in too is I agree with you, Jordan, about compensating your ops or carrier sales team, whatever you want to call them, giving them a piece of the pie. I 100% agree on that. And in addition to that, one of the things that I really loved in the past is the like a profit sharing structure where everybody in the entire company gets to benefit at the end of the year or whatnot. So we used to have it at the last company I was with, where everybody from salesperson to IT to HR got a cut of whatever growth the company achieved as a entire organization. And it was like Christmas Day, everyone getting their checks handed out. It was this big thing, but it really brought everybody in, and it was like, hey, because we all came together and we were effective, and we helped each other out instead of working against each other, we're all getting this reward. And you see it too with companies they'll give out like a Christmas bonus or whatever at the end of the year to everybody on the team, to show appreciation. And that all goes back to culture. And it's not just about the money, right? Remember, for some people, it's that check might be dollars and cents, but more so it's a hey, thank you very much for being part of this team. It's that recognition. So
yeah, and the caution, I agree with you too. And then the caution, and when we have these conversations all the time about the pros and cons of different comp plans, and the rub to that could be, if the economy continues down this path, there's gonna be some companies that don't grow, and you may have that IT person, that HR person that's sitting like, I worked just as hard this year as I did last year. Like, I don't understand, why I'm not getting it. So it's like we go through all these like what if scenarios to try to like. That's why a lot of these ideas don't necessarily go anywhere, because we're like, I don't think we have a bulletproof plan on that just yet. That I want to make sure we compensate these people properly.
Yeah.
What's more important, though, than the solution, I think, is that you guys are asking that question. I think most companies don't sit down and ask, is the incentive we're offering to whatever employee it is doing what it's supposed to, incentivizing the employee to do the best and to want to improve, right? And if it isn't, it's not effective for anybody, the company or the employee.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your the outsourced, or we'll call it the near. So we'll talk about Lean, right? So Lean's obviously a partner of ours, a sponsor on the show, and we use them. Ben and I use it for Freight 360 for some of our marketing stuff and our tech side stuff. So talk us through the story of kind of how Lean got introduced to ARL, how you guys have really leveraged their ability to help you guys scale, and really just how that relationship's gone.
Yeah, silver lining of the non-compete that I had to work my way out of for a year, and when I couldn't do brokerage. Little side note to anyone that's out there: make sure you know what non-competes are and that you don't sign them. Yeah, there's plenty of companies in our industry that do not make you sign non-competes. Give Steve Cox a little shout out for that too, spreading the word. But no, so during that time though, I was working on the transport side. We're processing paper logs and billing out drayage moves, and we met Robert Cadena and David Bell and Jeff Mazer. They were Smith Cargo at the time, but they told us about this operation in Colombia. And Ron turned to me and said, "Hey, would you go check it out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd love to." So we did that. We saw, and we just hit it off, and we were sold on the model they were going to build. This back in 2015. The office, the structure they had set up even back then was immaculate. And we started with 2 people in safety, 2 people in billing, and we're just creating SOPs for that, just the minutia that happens when you're running a trucking company. And when I was down there is when I realized it was like, these guys are college educated, bilingual. These are great opportunities for them. I was like, I could teach these guys to move freight. Said, we taught recent college grads, 20 to 30 people at a time at a big brokerage, how to move freight. I said, I know I can do that. And that was like my aha moment of like, how I'm going to do this different. So I started with myself, Kurt Brannigan, who's my director of sales now, and 2 Colombians. And that was just going to be it. We were going to teach them how to build loads, track and trace, call for pickup numbers, all the basic stuff. And we just teach them from start to finish. And over time, we realized what we really had. And it was like, if we can really make 4 of these people super users, so we'll never have to train entry level again, because they will always continuously train for those positions. So our differentiator now that we built up on the logistics side is I can offer support at a much earlier phase for a salesperson in more of that cradle to grave model to make sure that they never leave the sales mindset. Because as you build that book of business and you have to do more ops work, over time you end up doing more ops and sales, and then you lose your confidence in your sales abilities. And that's when people max out at a certain peak. Yeah. Whereas we just never let them get out of a sales mindset, because the second ops starts coming into play, you get more support. And there's different tiers. We call it the path to greatness. But, some of it's in Colombia and some of it then it does end up being here as they build out these teams. But, you as a salesperson can ultimately be managing a team of 4 or 5 people within 2 years, and you're making the same commission regardless, because I cover the costs for all those people. But I was able to scale it because of Lean and the cost savings.
I'd say that's the biggest barrier to scaling too, right? And you see that across the industry, cradle to grave or not, is that you're just, when you get to a certain amount of business, most companies make you operate at the higher volume before they staff it. Like, yeah. I know Nate's talked about Pierce. Pierce kind of works off what, a 50% margin, not margin, like capacity number. Like they kind of want to always be
like when if we see people over, like they're averaging over 50% workload, we're like, we got to start thinking about adding team members. Because you don't want them getting maxed out and then it's too late. You know what I mean?
Well, and I'll give you, a real example too. I've got a client and I've been working with this entire brokerage for 3 years now. And I have one of their top salespeople. And this is what happens. Some of them, like, you get to burnout, right? Like, cause they're literally like at wit's end. They're at 60, 70 hours a week. Answering phone calls at 2, 3 in the morning. We all know that's part of the job, but when it's an unending, like you can't see like the end of this, you run into burnout, because they're like, how long can I keep running on this treadmill until I get support? And then you have some managers are like, well, we'll get it. Well, having any defined timeline, whether it be 2 years or a year, is better than like, we don't know, because again, you can't, when you don't know the end of the road you're running on, it gets very difficult to run at all.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer, it's not the big problems that make them burn out. It's not even the calls after hours that make them burn out. It's dealing with that constant reprioritization of your day and the minutia of like things that are just mindless. Building orders and calling for this POD and where's this truck at? I don't have tracking on them. I got to call them. Like, you're redoing these things, and then the problem comes in, and now you're stressed to no end because you don't have time to properly deal with that problem. Well, the idea was get all that other stuff off of their plate, so they only have to deal with that problem, and turn that into a relationship building moment of saying, like, I'm not going to be so short-sighted to work, whatever it is, we'll make it go away, whether it costs us money or not, but handle it and let the customer see that communication. And then now you can quickly move on to the next thing and you're still in a positive mentality.
Well, yeah, and it's like you pointed out, it's the switching of the tasks that is very stressful on just human beings, right? Switching tasks takes a tremendous amount of energy. Like in coaching, I use the analogy of like, we're way more like a train than a car. We're not built to stop every block at every red light. We're meant to move in a direction, keep moving at a level of focus, and then switch to something else. Our industry is you're switching constantly, no matter what. Like you could be in the middle of a sales call and you get a text message and an email that you've got an issue that's blown up and you've got to run and jump to that. Like, even if you're still talking to the prospect, your mind is now already on the problem and your stress levels going up. Like, I got to get off this phone, but this is an important conversation. My driver's screaming at me. My shipper's getting pissed off. And then it's just bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
To know that I'm not the only person that deals with that, Ben. You just validated my feelings. So,
Well, great analogy is you're selling. It's like you're sitting there on a first date with a new girl you're trying to impress, and you got your
So
ex sitting there
excited.
just yelling at you for all the bad things you've done there.
Screaming. Blowing you up, text message, phone calls. You're hitting silent, and they're just coming through. And then they come through the emails, and it's just getting louder and louder and louder. And it's just like.
So Jordan, let me ask you this then in regards to your outsourced team, because obviously we're talking culture here. So being that they're not physically in the same location as you, they come from a different cultural background, and they're not technically an employee of yours. How do you translate that culture over to your folks from Lean? Do you have any struggles with it? Does it seem pretty easy? Or I guess, what did that look like for you guys?
Well, I guess, and we always took the mentality that it's not outsourcing. I mean, on paper it is, we get that, but outside of that, that is our office. And it's just the same as I have an office in Jacksonville, Florida. Like, I don't look any differently at those guys. And it's important that we infused our culture into their office from a very early phase and show them a path. Because if we're just going to delegate BS work to them and think they're going to do that forever, like that's a failing mentality. We wanted them to all see their career paths as well and see what motivated them. Now, we do put some nice bonus plans in place for them because ultimately it's a big family culture down there and they want to be able to earn money to help their families. And we give them that opportunity, but they want a lot of career development as well. And so now that they can see the org chart and the layers and the people, okay, I see where that person got to that level, I can get there. Back 5 years ago, that didn't necessarily exist. I had to paint that picture for them.
Okay.
And I had to you got to trust me, but I'm telling you, this is where it's going. You're not going to see, or believe me, I get it, but give me time. Let's work through it. And now there's a lot of the conductors. I remember when you stood here and there was only a few of us and you said this would happen. And it was like, yeah, I mean, we just got to stick to the course and be patient along the way. But you have to recognize they can't wait forever. Like, you got to show them some wins along the line.
Yeah.
And
then
it looks like ARL, like any other office we have.
Could you, and I mean, again, I don't need to put out there any proprietary information, but anything you could share on specifics on how you've done that? Because the people that I've worked with, clients too, that work with Lean, and I work with Lean on the brokerage side and on the Freight 360 side, is that's the one thing that like I went and did, but it's also my background. Like, hey, they need a path forward. They need to see what the next step looks like. They need to know what their career looks like moving forward. And I know Lean does a good job on their side, but I think the companies that add something on top of that are the ones that get the most out of those employees. They also get the best buy-in from their team members, that are near shored, kind of in a little bit farther a location. Any specifics you could share, or even general thoughts on how other companies can go about getting more out of their employees by doing similar things?
Sure. And you'll learn about me. I'm an open book. Yeah, this is where the sharing part comes in. If I share, then others will share as well. But really, and I think Lean does a great job, but I expect nothing from them. Get me the employees, get me the interviews set up. That's what I need. And then we take all the responsibility from there. So we almost just treat them as a placement agency. And because of that, now we know, like, yeah, they're going to help us along the way. They don't just leave us high and dry. But when it comes to the training and the processes, all these things, like, we make it our responsibility because we know how important that business is to our company. And it's not because it's cheaper labor than we have here in the States. The whole idea was take the work that people here in the States don't want to do and have them do it, but do it in a way that, like I said, that they'll see value from it as well. And tying them to our success was a big part of it. And then tying them to individual
Doing it right
success
now.
too.
Jordan's got the call
Shipper
coming in.
issue.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm on
sorry.
the podcast, but now I got this fire
And
to
then
put
you
out.
got to stop. You can try to stop the calls, but not in this business. But yeah, we started as we paired them up with different reps that they were supporting. We really tied into that success and gave them goals the same way we were giving that rep goals. So when you'd hit these different tiers, there was moments to celebrate, and they would get some extra money from it. But ultimately, it was like now they're working together and becoming like best friends with their rep. Like, let's go get this together. And anytime
Yeah.
like they see their rep doing work that they should be doing, they're like, no, I'm going to do that. You need to go sell. You're going to more business.
And I think that you give a great example. Like we used to do that at TQL. Like we would throw cash to our assistants, but again, like what we would end up with is more of what you described. Like we were genuinely a team with the people. Like you all cared about the freight equally. It wasn't like I got to do this because it's my job, my broker's telling me to, because they cared as much as the broker did. And I think the more, again, you can get those people to work as a cohesive team, just you get a better result. The customers are happier, the carriers are happier, the company does better, you have better retention, like everything gets better.
Yeah, and you got to know too. I mean, there are Colombian laws that they have to abide by, and there's certain things like if they get sick and they go to the doctor a lot, and they could get a note that says, "Hey, for 3 days, I'm not going back to the office," and there's nothing Lean can really do about that. It's their laws, but the employee, if you really have them bought in, those are the ones that say, "Yeah, I feel better. I'm coming back to work tomorrow."
Mm-hmm.
They don't want
They're
to
not
take.
pushing the boundaries of like, hey, right? That's the opposite end. They're pushing the boundaries of wanting to get back because it's their team misses them, and they know that like, hey, they've left. They're a valuable part, and by not being there, their team's one man out.
Yeah, and you got to get down there too. That's probably the bigger part, and getting down there as much as you can. We've made when you're down there and they get to show you their culture, and it's really a great experience. I said the food's great, the scenery's great, the people are great, but now you connect with them on a different level, and then they'll sort of open up to you a little bit differently, and you start to understand that we're really not that different. Although obviously it's South America, and the poverty level is definitely significantly different down there. But for the people in these cities and the opportunities they have, I think they know that this is better opportunity than the previous generation had, and they really want to make the best of it. So if you can really lean into that and help them, I said they're now like, I got one of my guys, they've called me multiple times, like I can now take care of my grandmother or my mom, or it used to be my dad's responsibility. Now I can do it, and there's a lot of pride in that.
There's a ton of pride in there. Yeah. So, well, we got a couple of listener Q&A questions to get to here, but normally I would do a lean ad read. I'm pretty sure we just gave a lean advertisement for the last 25 minutes, but make sure you go to leangroup.com. If you guys want to learn more about the nearshore staffing options, that's what we were really hitting on there. But don't forget too, like Ben, like you and I talked about, there's other stuff that Lean offers outside of just staffing. So marketing assistance, if you're, even web development, anything technology related, check them out at leangroup.com. It's a great way to scale your business. And, it gives you just have more options for things that you may not have the talent for in your immediate area. So, all right. First question here. What would happen if all the carriers went on strike for 2 weeks? I just laugh at this one because it would never happen. But if you, it's kind of like asking what would happen if everyone stopped using credit cards, right? Like it would collapse the financial, or if people stopped using debt, it would collapse the financial system. If truck drivers stopped driving for 2 weeks, no one would have food. You know what I mean? But I think the reason they ask this question is because there's a lot of animosity between brokers and carriers right now. And that's what I would rather address is how do you kind of better that relationship? And it kind of goes back to the culture thing that we were just talking about, because we've seen carriers go on strike before, and some of the PRO Act that's been proposed in DC would require certain people to unionize based on the company that they're working for and stuff like that. The goal here is to not have strikes or drivers that are not on the road. We want drivers to want to work with brokers and brokers to want to work with carriers to make the supply chain more smooth and more efficient and effective. Do you guys have any thoughts on how to fix the broker carrier animosity or the bashing that happens, but back and forth about rates? We're getting screwed on rates, and this guy didn't pay me detention. What would you give as a tip or any advice?
I think obviously the market just wins, and the more information you can share with these guys just to educate them on what's going on, and they're aware, they know it. And I know we led this with the DAT. I don't want to bash this, but if you're living on the load boards as a carrier, you're going to get the highs and the lows. I think enough is like you got to build relationships with certain brokers that take good care of you through thick and thin. But that does mean that rates will come down. I mean, otherwise the broker's going to lose all the business too. The shippers are driving the rates down, not necessarily the broker. But if you're going to live and die on the load boards, this is not the spot you want to be in.
Yeah, and I think I'll go a little further. I mean, and again, I'll use the load boards as just to point out, like, it's you're living in the spot market, right? You're living in the just now. What can I go get right now? And again, when the market's great, everybody's happy. When it swings back to the other side, nobody has any diversification on the carrier side, right? Like to your point. And I've seen a lot of posts in our group, Nate, that are going right around this topic, right? Like, why don't we just stop taking loads? And then somebody had said on that same thread, well, why don't we just get a brokerage license? And then somebody else commented, like, you don't need a brokerage license to get dedicated freight. Like, if you can't sell your assets to a shipper, you'll never be able to sell it as a broker, because it's a shitload harder to sell I don't own trucks to a shipper than I've got trucks. And again, you shouldn't be on one side or the other, but you should have a healthy mix. So again, your lower paying contract freight typically should help you get rid of the highs and lows if you've got a few trucks. And Nate and I are working on a course right now, actually, for the asset side that is going to go right at some of these things, like, understanding the market if you're a carrier, understanding what it means to live on the load boards in the spot market. Hey, when it's peak, it's great. When it's not, you might not be in business. So what are some strategies you can do so that maybe you don't get the peak, but you definitely don't get the bottom either, and you live in a nice, healthy margin over a long period of time, and everybody's happy?
Yeah. And I want to echo what Jordan said before, which is just educating folks, because whether it's your customers or carriers that don't understand why rates are changing or why capacity is changing or whatever, having that conversation and educating them just a little bit can ease a lot of that unknown, or kind of prevent some of that back and forth. Good stuff. Next question. What software can I use to make rate confirmations and bill of ladings? Well, if you're using a TMS, I would hope that you can do both of those inside of your TMS. I will tell you, we're on McLeod right now, and McLeod did not have a pre-built bill of lading template. We had to build one. So that was interesting. If you're not using a TMS, there's billoflading.org to create a BOL. And I don't know, you could just probably make a rate confirmation in Microsoft Word or something, I suppose. But if you've got a reputable TMS, they're going to have a template in there. Did you guys ever have to bootstrap either one of you and just like make your own bill of lading or RateCon?
Like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't want to tell you. Like I'm telling these guys, like you guys don't remember. We used to have to fax setup packets.
Yeah.
And you would go back to the machine to see if it went through, and then you didn't get all the documents. And there's like you're. If I had a step count thing on in that office, it's over 10,000 steps a day for sure.
And if it makes you doesn't feel as old, I remember when CRMs came out and they were like the newest, greatest thing, and companies were like, so wait, we're going to know what all of our customers think, and we're going to be able to keep it all in one place.
So I would tell you, I mean, the hidden question behind this question is probably, is this person being cheap and not paying for a TMS? And that's probably the answer. You can get like literally a
free one, a send free
version,
or
you can get their premium version. We actually have an affiliate with them. You can go right to our website or the show notes and get a free month. But yeah, I mean, just don't cheap out on the stuff that you are. It's just important for you to have to succeed. Don't do it. All right, last question. Very vague. What's the best way to find carriers? Well, I'm going to say that the best way is probably to diversify the ways in which you find carriers. So it could be a mix of interacting with them through the load boards. I've seen it through social media, even just calling out to a carrier that you have potential business in and starting a conversation and learning what does their fleet look like? What are their preferred lanes? Things like that. Don't just start the conversation when you need them. Start the conversation well before you need them to see if it's a good fit long term. So I think my tip would be to diversify the different ways that you are trying to source carriers, and don't just post and pray on the load boards that you're going to have a carrier that's going to call you immediately. What would you guys add?
Yeah, I always and throw shameless plugs in for Parade because I'm a big believer in the product, and it was one of the ways that I knew I was going to make this different, and I wasn't going to have to build a big carrier sales team. It was really just taking all the data that's inside here and let the machine learning start to figure out what's the one load that this carrier would actually care about. I still remember we used to send out all of our open loads to the carriers that get them twice a day, and everything else was like that's white noise. Like let's just target them with the one thing or present that information back to our users so that, three people going to cover the same load shouldn't take three different paths to get there because they're going to end up with three different results. Not to mention you got three, various people all over the place calling the same people and offering them different things that they don't even care about. So you learn from your data, but partner with companies that'll help you do that. I mean, we weren't going to build something like that. So we let's partner with somebody.
Yeah, I
Ben,
think one of the smaller tips is if you are calling on a posted load through a load board, have a deeper conversation. If that load doesn't fit, ask a few more questions, right? Hey, yeah, this load doesn't work. Hey, you got drivers looking for loads anywhere else? Where do you guys typically look for loads? Like that extra 15 seconds with a good MC can get you capacity on maybe another lane you're working on today, or maybe you find out like runs backhauls out of an area that you send a bunch of trucks to, right? And you can help work together. A lot of the networking I did early on, and you reference this a lot, was with other brokers because that's who I would prospect because we could get co-brokerage agreements, but also they knew things I didn't. They were working usually in a different area of the market. They could tell me about an area of the country, what they're paying and what they would need. And again, I think the more brokers could collaborate with other brokers, just the better everybody does. I think a lot of people are scared, so they don't ask these questions of carriers too, or other brokers. But again, just think about if every brokerage actually did coordinate with each other. And like, I could see what loads you needed and you can match up your front hauls and back hauls, right? Like I know Transplace does this on a bigger scale, but even just simple communication, you could end up with better relationships, better carriers, and work together.
And just to add that to recognize quickly, are you talking a 1 truck operation, a 20 truck operation, or a 100 truck operation? Because they're different conversations. You don't sit there and call that 1 truck operation, which are good and they're great, but like
Very
how
different.
many times can you call them? They're going to be able to help you. You need to be perfectly matched up.
Yep.
Yeah, that's huge. That's massive. Well, good stuff. Good conversation. We gotta revisit this Bills Steelers game. I'm looking at the stats right now. 1:00 in Orchard Park, my hometown here in Buffalo, Western New York. Bills are a 14-point favorite. No joke, minus 14. Over-under's at 47.
That's actually a problem for you because this is what the Steelers do. The second we think they're down and out, they'll go win a game like this. Yeah, it's a stretch. But I was looking at like you got the Buccaneers and the Dolphins who are hot now. I was like, well, there might be right when they think we're going to lose them all, we'll pull off a few wins. But
yeah, I mean, any given Sunday, you have to remember, and I always have to remind myself that these are professional football players. It's not like it's a JV team playing like a peewee team. You know what I mean? It's like these are professionals that they're the best of the best. They got drafted, stayed on a team, got the big contract. So
I am kicking myself right now that I don't have a terrible towel within reaching distance that I can get you. Close the show.
I'll give my prediction. I'm going to say that I'm going to call it I think the Bills cover 14 points. So I think you might have like a 17-point or a 20-point win. I don't know. It could be like 27-6. I don't know. But I think it's going to be – I think you might have high scoring too. I think I might take the over on that. The Bills still have some injuries out there, although I do think Tre'Davious White is back this week. But yeah, I'm taking a high scoring Bills cover.
Well,
you guys want to give your predictions?
Kenny Pickett is going to come in and rejuvenate the team here. I'm not going to go as crazy, and I don't work on spreads when it comes. I have a general rule, and there's no betting when it comes to Pittsburgh sports. But I'll go with my heart here. And I'm a Pitt Panther fan too, so Kenny Pickett's going to lead us back to the promised land.
Fair enough. How did he do? I guess performance in the second half when he came in.
The stat line looks terrible because there's 3 interceptions on it.
Okay.
There's been a lot of debate in the office here in Pittsburgh about whether there's 2 of them. One was a Hail Mary, can't count that one, but 2 of the Chase Claypool needs to catch the ball. and there's no other way around it. But Kenny threw a pick with like 3 minutes left when we were up 3 points. They just can't have it. But they said the guy didn't have any first team reps. You tell him at halftime, okay, you're in now, and just go. Yeah. So what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, I pulled it up. So because I was curious, his rating looks terrible.
He completed all of his passes.
Yeah, I was going to, well, he
10 of 13 with 3 picks.
10. Yeah.
Everything was caught.
He completed all his passes. So, yeah, he was 10 for 13 with the 3 INTs, and he was averaging 9.2 yards a throw. That's a good – I mean, that's –
He's throwing downfield. There's a play, if you watch, he hits Freiermuth over the middle with a defensive lineman about to smack him in the face, nails him right down to the 2-yard line, and Kenny gets up with a smile on his face and is talking to the guy and is like, yes, that's our guy.
I should have brought up your tight end there. Was it Freiermuth? Is that how you say his name?
Yep.
In fantasy, I played against some guy and your tight end puts up 60 points. And I'm like, who is this guy? He caught for 200 some yards. It was absolutely insane.
He went to Penn State. He went to Penn State and he was like the mini Gronk when we drafted him. But he's a Heath Miller type guy.
That's what I was just going to say. Yep.
Big boy. So, well, good stuff. We'll see how we'll definitely see how the game goes this coming Sunday here. Jordan, if anyone wants to reach out to you, we'll put your LinkedIn in the show notes. And what's the website for ARL?
Yes, it's ARLnetwork.com, which gets you to both sides of the house, ARL Transport and ARL Logistics.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate having you on the show here. It's been a great conversation. Hopefully we can do it again soon sometime.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yep. Ben, any closing thoughts here?
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next week, go Bills.
Go Steelers.
That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.